It's 8:15 and then some, and I'd like to call the Whatcom Public Utility District meeting to order. Thank you all for coming. Let's all start with the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so any comments or changes to our agenda today? Good.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Motion
Second.
all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And now let's move on to the consent agenda, which is two meeting minutes, the special meeting on strategic planning last Friday, as well as the prior commission meeting.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Of course, also the claims, sorry, I didn't mention.
Yeah.
Right. I'll second that.
The motion and a second, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. We have next on our agenda the public comment, so we can look online as well as in the room to see if there's any public comment that.
None here.
Okay.
No, not this time.
At this time, okay. All right, we will have another public comment period at the end. And before the executive session. All right, so let's move on to the general manager's report.
Well, fortunately, I have a relatively quick report today. So first, I'd like to call on Lisa. You had some comments you got to give us on open house?
Well, we wanted to just prompt a conversation, if we could, about plans for the open house, because it's sort of been briefly mentioned, but not talked about in detail. Andrew and Kurt and I met last week and sort of made a plan for what we envision based on what we've heard, and we want to make sure that that's in line with what everybody wants before we start actually producing materials. So we're visualizing sort of almost science fair like with some setups, couple different booths. So sort of right, as you come in the door, we think probably just something that's real basic about who the PUD is, because if we're talking about just bringing in general public and engaging people that haven't really participated before, we don't want to just dive into like, here's what we're doing at Plant One, and they're like, what is that and who are you? So we wanted to kind of start with that, and then I know there was discussion about Plant One and some of our capital projects, and then we thought maybe also something about geothermal, just to give people an idea of sort of what we're envisioning in the future. So those are the sort of three stations that we envision having, and having you folks here and mingling and talking to people and having a staff person at each station, sort of describing, what's going on with those projects. So that's kind of what we envisioned as an outline, and we invite any comment, or if there's something more specific or different that you'd like us to focus on, but I don't think more than three sort of stations like that is something that we can really manage to put together in the next month, because we want it to be well informed in detail. So any guidance is welcome.
I think that sounds fun. I think it's more engaging than having just one speaker up there talking to people. It can be more conversational. I like the idea of having several stations and having people, mingle. I don't know about you all.
Yeah, one thing that it might be helpful is for people to understand that above all, we're a water utility in terms of the scope of our business, the volume of water we distribute, to make sure that when people walk in, just through the qualitative way that the information to get to recognize we are primarily a water utility that pulls water from the main stem of the Ferndale River. And we're talking about continuing that in a big way with a big capital investment. So a little bit of visibility into the scale of our operations around water and how much money we're involved, we're talking about continuing to invest in that. So that's one thing that I think would be helpful, so people gather that.
Okay. And we can do that kind of as we talk about who we are and
I think
transition to plant, and then here's,
Right.
at our next station, you'll see some more details about what's happening.
I don't know what the ratios would be, and you guys would know, but like if 10 parts is water, I'm guessing maybe 3 parts or 4 parts would be electricity, and then broadband would be 0.1 part or 0.2 parts. I don't know what that number is, Chris.
Yeah, it depends on how you
Yeah.
splice it. So if you just do money, we're 50-50 water electric.
Yeah.
So that's what I usually tell people is we're about the same size, even though the electric side of our business is much simpler than the water side.
And there's not as much capital invested in electric side as there is in.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that may be different in the future, but that's true today.
Do you think it would be worthwhile to invite like partners that we work with, like to have the port there, or maybe even like
Refinery?
customers, or the refineries be there?
Refineries.
Yeah,
To participate or just to,
like maybe
Attend.
even, no, to participate.
potentially we would need to then look for a different space.
Oh, what space are we using?
I was here.
Oh, here, I see, okay.
So
I was,
we're gonna
for some reason, I was
set
thinking it
corners.
was gonna be the Ferndale event space we used before.
Who do we expect to attend in that case?
Based on what we've seen before, we'll get 6 or 7 folks, plus, anybody who can drum up. So we expect a very light attendance based on past.
Okay,
I'm hopeful that, that our presence in the parade, and for those of you that are gonna participate, we're actually gonna have like some postcard size things to hand out. In addition to having sort of the image of the river and focusing on water sort of as part of that presentation and the parade to the public, we're gonna have some banners that sort of are like, who is the PUD, come and find out. And sort of encouraging people to come to that event. How much that will drum up, I can't say, but our hope is that there may be a small handful of people that see that and come find out. But I would think that if we saw a dozen attendees, I think we'd probably be,
Happy, yeah, that's a good outcome, yeah.
okay,
But we took the big space and then it was very empty, so rather than doing that, rather than let's be over capacity here.
Mhm.
If you know what I'm saying,
that's our
And-
plan.
yeah, I think we need smartness to it, and then also recognize, but people should know where we are. If you force them to come out here, we can put nice signs out there.
Yeah.
Right, we can put balloons, say open house at the PUD,
Yeah,
right, we can do things to communicate. That for people to come in here, but I would have thought Ferndale Event Center, but I'm fine with this other.
yeah, I think that it would be too
Yeah.
big of a space for us. I think that, what my hope is that this will generate some interest, and then
Yeah,
if you're looking at a second meeting that's
Next
specific
year,
to
yeah.
strategic planning or something like that,
Maybe it's
depending
an
on
annual
what that attendance is like, we could look at a larger space. And if we continue to do it annually and we garner more
Right,
attention,
right,
then we can move to a bigger space. Otherwise, I think, if we start here, then people can, again, see where we are. I think that's important too.
mhm.
Yeah, no, that's great. And then we won't need partners, but if we're in a bigger space, it'd be good to have partners, because we gotta take up some of that space.
Yeah, right.
And the lines of people invite, you wanted to say something, I'm sorry, you go first.
no, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, people to invite, if we can look at the members of the public who commented in the past
Mhm.
during, at our logs over the last
Send
year
them
or so.
individual invitations, sure.
Yeah.
Do that.
We know you like to come, but
Yeah.
come all at once, yeah, and, yeah, we'll see if that is helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's all I have.
Great.
Almost. The second item on my list was to give an update on the float. So is there anything else to add?
No, I think I covered it in
I
the,
think so.
yeah, I'll have more about that, and commissioners, as far as your availability, there will not be riding on the float for insurance reasons. But we would like to have,
Down.
people join us to walk and hand out information and candy.
Hand up, was it hand up candy or throat candy?
Hand out is the rule, hand out candy is the rule.
And no points for hitting them in the forehead.
Yeah. So, so that, but we do plan to focus on sort of the river itself. And that is essentially the design of the float is the river and the environment.
hand out water.
That's it.
We could, yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be
A lot of plastic
a
bottles.
lot of plastic
A lot of
bottles.
plastic bottles.
You know what I-
That's probably a mixed
So
message.
maybe we can shoot people with water.
No.
We're back to super soakers. I love it.
Don't encourage this. No. Don't encourage this. Yeah.
It's a hot day, or
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking,
Put a
you know,
Mr. on.
heavily sugared Kool-Aid, so sweet and sticky.
And then the bees.
And the bees.
Just so everyone knows, Chris is not on the steering.
Yeah, I was drunk
He's
off
like,
of this one.
You have to meet in the vault to lock the door so he can't.
He's not invited.
Yeah, they asked me for, you know, what would you like to see done? And then when I tell them, they say, okay, we won't do that.
Yeah.
It's real
I
simple.
will probably send out an email, to those of you if you're able to be there. And Eddie, I think you weren't sure if you were gonna be around.
yeah, I did have other plans.
Okay, but I'll wanna get a t-shirt size, cause I think we'll have some t-shirts that are done up specifically and actually have the date of the,
We're gonna have merch for the first time?
for the open house, to advertise the open house. Yes, so,
Sweetness. Yeah.
so as you're walking
Growing up.
the parade route, we can, also, you know, be just doing
I
it,
stole
yeah,
that.
to encourage people.
That's exciting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep,
I'm excited to work on the float.
that's good, cause
Yeah.
that work for you,
Yes.
cause that's not the general sentiment here.
Yeah, oh, well,
Not a great deal of excitement.
again, we are award winners, Lisa and I, so just step aside and let us do our thing.
All right. So,
The glad support.
real quick, we've got, some work due to Karina by, gosh, I guess. It was
Yesterday, or
yesterday.
Friday.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was due by
so
Friday.
just a reminder. She's
Oh, sure,
got that.
review the vision and respond.
It's real simple. It's less than 5 minutes. Just rank the generated vision statements that she's got, kind of what you like and don't like. And she's looking for any kind of narrative comments that you have to modify, you know.
Yeah. I respond.
Oh, good. Yeah, she needs to get that. And then last but not least, for those who weren't on the YRO One management team meeting, last week, one of the things that I've been working with the Ag Water Board on is bringing the idea of a water bank back to Whatcom County. And the first step is just to make people aware of what a water bank is and then talk about all the different ways that you can build it, what kind of rules you can have, et cetera, et cetera. And the YRO One board didn't reject that, and especially because what we're doing was saying, look, what we want to do is set up an information meeting next time. So tell them what you're gonna tell them, then tell them what you said. This is the tell them what you're gonna tell them part. And everybody was okay with it, even Merle was okay with it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think he was looking for the reason to say no, and I wasn't giving it to him because it's so preliminary, and we'll just see how that goes. But so that'll come back in the September meeting, I believe, and I'm planning on trying to get Bill Clark in there to talk about all of the water banks that are around Washington State and hopefully some of the other ones in the West, because there are other models that could be used here. And
You also talked about water exchange and water trust. Are we
Yeah.
going to explore any of that or just focus on banking?
banking.
Okay.
Yeah, Ecology has set up a trust, and basically, it doesn't really attract the ag community, which is the target. Because all the municipal users have reasons to conserve water, and we got that built in. But the ag community has their motivation is to maintain their beneficial use, maintain their rights, and not relinquish.
What about exchange though? Does exchange mean like if I have a water right and I'm not using it, or it's not that I can exchange that? Like, if that's essentially what an exchange is, right?
Yeah,
Or-
usually what an exchange those work better in areas where you have summer and winter allocations.
Mhm.
And then you can have someone trade their summer allocation for your winter allocation and vice versa. So you get those, in cases like that. Here, where you just got a QA/QI year round, the exchanges are less meaningful. The other thing is that when you set up an exchange really well, you're 99% of the way to a bank. So you may as well just do
May as
it.
well just bank.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So more to follow on that, and that is my report. I got a lot of stuff on strategic and other things, but
Great.
we'll handle them at the appropriate time. Any questions for me?
Yes, on the, water banking subject, there's, to what degree does a, agricultural, participant, potential participant in the water banking process get to maintain confidence? Meaning,
Confidence in what?
if you think you have a certified access, that's now all of a sudden under question in an adjudication.
It depends on how you set the bank up. What are your fundamental rules? So, one bank that I read quite a bit about in Arizona, they're very, very specific. When water goes into a bank, it's automatically deemed a beneficial use, whether or not anybody ever pulls it out of the bank. And no, features of the right can change while it's in the bank. So,
The state would have to agree with that.
yeah, absolutely. The state would have to agree with everything. This would have to be, subject to approval by ecology.
I want to say I really appreciate that you're taking leadership on this.
Thank you.
Because for a long time, so when I was on the, watershed management board and perhaps even before that, the water banking was something that the Ag Water Board community had said they were going to work on, but it never really got.
Well, they actually did with Steve. There's a ton of work that they did on it back in the 2012, 2013.
Okay,
And, basically what are they called? The co-managers, the fish council on Wire One just said no.
okay.
And, the times were different then. It wasn't clear that you hadn't had a massive fish kill in South Fork and, other things hadn't happened yet, and we're getting there.
Mhm. So it just, the environment might be different, and I'm sure there's things to improve upon.
Yeah, I mean, you can always do better. Plus, John and Bill Clark and others have done a good job of educating me to the extent that I can absorb it and,
Yeah,
why these things are good. and
that's
what
good to
their
know. So we've
drawbacks
had
are.
prior involvement,
Mhm.
and then, we kind of let it lay dormant, in the hands of the ag community, and now we're bringing it back forward.
Yeah, working with the ag community.
Working with the ag community, yeah.
It's,
Okay.
I think it's gonna be interesting. I have no prediction.
No, me either.
Okay, I think next is the operations report.
Becker.
Morning, Commissioners. I just have one quick item. I'm sure you recall a couple months ago, weeks ago, I declared an emergency for Plant 1 VFD4. That's a variable frequency drive 4. I wanted to let you know that pump control is now online. It's online as we speak. All the work was done and it's been commissioned, so we're using that pump currently. I just wanted to wrap that up with you. And I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's all I have for right now.
What was wrong with the pump, man?
The control board failed.
Oh,
That's right,
Yeah.
and we had to hire a special contract for the purpose of. And, so how did that get approved as far as budgets, or is it showing up in a current,
Yeah, this is one of those ones where we go ahead and allocate the capital that's for all the small projects,
Mhm.
because we don't know a lot of the small projects that are gonna happen, that are emergent. And this was an emergent project, and so we will manage the budget so that we don't overrun.
yeah, how much of a hit was it?
I don't know exactly.
I like the unexpected aspect of the hit, because there's obviously some maintenance, I'm sure you did it in a way that would be.
Yeah, Kurt, do you remember what the total was?
Not off the top of my head. I think it was around 450K.
So pretty significant.
A big portion of our kind of emergency reserve that we budget every year.
But that, like Chris said, we do have a capital line item for pump work. Because we know with Plant 1, there's always a chance that something could go sideways over there.
yeah, understood.
How's brush cleanup going, Kurt? Did we hire goats?
Oh yeah, so we actually there's out at the end of Douglas Road at our intertie building, there is there's the archery range. So
Yeah.
that's all, we've got that all opened back up, and so that's all done. Joe, our project manager, had to talk some people out of walking on the trail, and so but I'm sure he had some fun with that. But but that's open back up, and we need to do some work here at the plant. If you look back behind the admin building, you see there's some spots with some really tall grass, but I think that's going to get taken care of in the next couple weeks. So it's one of those ongoing things.
So the archery range, isn't that Alcoa's property?
Yes, it is Alcoa's property. We have an easement out there.
We do.
And we maintain these.
We're
Really?
maintaining the easement to get to the intertie.
It's my favorite archery range in Whatcom County. It's the only archery range.
I was to say, is there option? Is there other ones?
Questions for Kurt?
Nope.
No,
Great.
thank you, Kurt.
Thanks, commissioners.
Hey, Kurt, no. So, let's move on to old business then.
Andrew, do you have any update for broadband?
I can give a brief update, if you'd like.
Sure.
Sure. Morning, commissioners.
Good morning.
Well, first, I'm excited about the merge conversation. I think branded Whatcom PUD super sooners are in our future.
Heck, yeah.
But in all seriousness, we'll talk about the Point Roberts project for just a moment. As you know, the DAP and the tribe are extremely sensitive to any ground disturbing activities out on the point. And so to accommodate their requests and restrictions in a way, we've decided to remove any underground activities from the project overall, which means an elimination of roughly 300 address points out of the roughly 1,200 or so that were originally part of the project scope. And what could potentially happen is a potential exit ramp for the project moving forward. And what I mean by that, and I'm bringing it up to you now, is because from past experience with PSC, it could take another 9 months or so just for them to approve what we want to do to avoid any ground disturbing activities. And what I mean by that is pole replacements. For one example, we want to replace in place. So as to avoid any new, if we want to place a new pole, for example, we want to remove the existing pole and put the new one in the same exact location as the original pole. And that will inflate costs that will come back from PSC. So our engineering team right now is reviewing all of those pole replacement activities and ground disturbing activities and looking to design a way to accommodate that. And so that will have to go back to PSC for approval. So that's what I mean. I could take another 8 to 9 months just for the approval, and then the actual work. And we won't get a timeline for we may, but historically PSC won't provide a timeline for when the actual work will be completed. So then we're on their time schedule, not ours. And so that's what I mean by potential exit ramp ahead of us. We do have to have the funds used up by the end of 2026. So we're in a bit of a timeline crunch now. But working with Chris and our funding agency, this is the best move forward to serve as many folks as possible out on the point. So that's the rundown right now where we are with the project. Did I miss anything?
No, I just want to jump in with another example. So we're looking at attaching telecom fiber to a whole bunch of existing poles. Some of those poles are going to need additional guying that they don't have today. So a guy is a string wire that goes down to the ground, and there's an anchor that you have to put in the ground. You can rarely use the same anchor that you use for a primary down guy. You have to put in a separate one. So the way that would work is we would have to apply for a permit to go in and do manual digging with an archaeologist to find out, is there anything there? And then if there's nothing there, you apply for another permit to actually do the work. And so those have to be done serially. And then you'd have to have an archaeologist standing by while the anchor's being drilled. So, for that one little piece of work, you might have 180 days of permitting just for that. So right now, the expense is a big deal, but it's really the timeline crunch. And we're not sure that we can get the thing built with all these restrictions by next December.
So, in our last commission meeting, we learned about this. I, took it upon myself to talk to some of the vendors about wireless. And I shared that with you, Andrew, and when you're on vacation, Chris, and appears to be no at least at present, there does not appear to be a wireless hybrid solution for that.
For Point
For
Roberts.
Point Roberts. Um. So, rather than, you know, so I don't know, are we absolutely sealed on that? Is there, not, you both feel like, I mean, you don't feel like there is anything that's gonna work out as far as wireless solution?
Not in a reasonable amount of time.
Okay, or money, no, right, and so, I think it's time to, make the state broadband office aware, if they're not already aware of it, and our legislators who represent Point Roberts at the state level, just let them, we should send them a letter,
I already did. Not our representatives, but the broadband office in DAP,
okay?
that this project is in serious schedule and money trouble.
So,
And the broadband office has responded that they will not extend the schedule because they can't. It's how the dollars are allocated.
I think it's appropriate for other people, to be made aware of it, so maybe what I'd like us to do is maybe discuss this at a future meeting, and for you to forward a letter to the commission that you wrote to the broadband office. And, you know, we may wanna, this commission might decide that we wanna communicate with our legislators or not.
Well, I mean, one thing you could do is just tell me to send it out to our legislators.
Yeah, let's take a look at it, no, next meeting, though, I think this is too early for us to make a decision like, because we haven't seen the letter.
Yeah,
Well, I think the decision, so this is a what versus how thing.
Yeah,
The what is communicate with the elected officials, the how is a staff issue. So if you want me to write a letter to the representative, I'm happy to do that.
are we ready to?
Well, I think that it would be great to write a letter to our representatives. Yeah, on behalf of the PUD, he can send it. I think each of us are, you know, also more than welcome to send our own personal concerns as commissioners.
Yeah,
I
why
mean,
don't
if
you
the will
copy
is-
us, obviously, if anytime you're
Oh,
sending.
yeah, I mean, the issue is if the will of the commission is that, you know, you're concerned and you want to address this, you know, I'm your official, you know, instrument, go ahead and use me. And then because you all agree, if you want to send something separate,
Yeah,
I see no problem with that. We don't need a resolution or anything.
Right.
We
It's-
see yours, no,
Yeah,
no,
you guys agree.
we can communicate with our, yeah.
I do think that you should send a letter though.
I will.
I think this is a big issue,
Yeah,
and I think that, I attended the first salmon ceremony, and I don't, it's like crazy, Providence, the people sitting across from me on the table were 3 people from a consulting firm that's doing the consulting on Point Roberts on archaeological and historical preservation. Now, it's obviously a busy ceremony, so, I didn't get that much time. But I certainly got the feeling from a brief conversation that, from the perspective of those who do archaeological preservation, for them, Point Roberts is a gold mine. And the reason it's a gold mine is it's relatively undeveloped land. And like so many things that they want to understand better in places like, you know, other coastal spots for Coast Salish peoples, it's very hard to access and very hard to find relatively undisturbed land. And so for that reason, they see it as a big resource. Okay, so that's fine. There's this one need, and then there's this other need of public infrastructure. There's people living at Point Roberts, and the pole replacements that, I mean, when PSC was asking for a lot of pole replacements from us, there was another side of the story. PSC has a hard time providing service to that area because there's so few people there. So like in a way, our project is actually helping improve the electrical infrastructure in Point Roberts too. I'm not saying that PSC shouldn't eat that, you know, and let us do it for free. That would be ideal. But I can understand, I don't know if Brian's on or not, but here, hope you found that funny. The point is that the reality is that it's an infrastructure project to serve the people of that community. And our leaders should be aware that we're just trade-off is happening.
So, just to back up a level and serve as a reminder for everybody. When these funds were first approved by the state, there was a 5-year shot clock, and 5 years seemed like forever. But then it took 2 years just to get between the NOFO and getting a contract with WISBO to get a contract with the state. So now we're down to 3 years. We expected 30 to 60 days to make ready work from Puget Sound Energy. It was 9 months. And now all of a sudden we're looking at it, we've got less than 2 years, we got about 18 months to go, and we have not begun construction. And now we're redesigning our original design to accommodate this. So it's, from a project management point of view, very, very much in jeopardy. This is not a good project.
Your communication should also include the Point Roberts Community Advisory Committee.
Yeah, PCRAC.
And it should include the county executive, because I know, it's within the
And,
county, I
and
know. he's-
I'm gonna include our senator and, Representative Larson and our state reps, and I'll do it all.
Okay, good.
Probably 42nd, not 40th. Right, because it's 42nd district. What do we think? Should we include 40th too?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
It's just-
Okay.
But he's talking about federal also.
Now, broadband,
Yeah.
The last thing is, we're still waiting for NTIA. They were supposed to give us an answer on the 15th or 16th. And on B2, and, haven't heard anything. So we're still in the 90-day extension of the whole thing. It's back to WISBO now. I don't know that WISBO is gonna do anything with all the applications until they hear from NTIA, whether they still got a. So we'll just see what happens with that.
Right, as you mean, as potential clawback of the original funding.
Yeah, we're just changing the terms, or we don't know what. I mean, it's up to NTIA at this point. We're waiting for that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, I'm just still here. You want to do geothermal?
Yeah, I don't have an update on geothermal.
Okay, I don't need it.
Okay.
Oh, I do have one little update. One of the conferences that I'm looking at going to in August, they're trying to organize a tour of the geothermal plant over in Idaho. So I may get pictures, I'll bring it back.
And are you gonna, in the July, PUD conference, are you gonna do a presentation on geothermal? Have you been approached or no?
No,
You haven't been approached, okay. Nicholas said he's gonna approach you.
hasn't happened.
Okay.
If he wants it the day before, I can do it. So,
Okay, well, I'm not gonna tell him that.
no, please don't.
Your time's more valuable to all of us.
But my point is that, it's, between Andrew and I, we've done this presentation 30, 40 times.
Okay,
Alright.
and then moving on to, strategic planning.
Adjudication.
Sorry.
We skipped over John.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's nothing there. We had our committee meeting last week, more discussion around rules, process, and some questions to go back to the court when we have a court meeting in about a week.
Hey, John.
So nothing to report. Yes.
Well, one thing you did send over was, Ecology's filing for people who are not contesting.
There is a form and there is a form that they have presented to the court for voluntary dismissal, folks who were named in the adjudication case, but do not believe they have an interest in a water right nor own what property that's benefited by a water right. Someone who's an example would be someone who lives in an area that has been annexed by the city and the developer gave up the well years ago and when they connected to the city. So Ecology has presented that form as a proposal to the court, and we expect the court to review that in the coming weeks. So that's really the report, not a lot to pass on. Our court hearing is, I believe, the 9th, Monday the 9th.
Thank you.
So strategic plan.
Let's move on to strategic plan. Thank you, John.
Yep.
I'm gonna go ahead and hand this out. This is actually the spreadsheet that was, prepared by MFA, mated with the spreadsheet for our budget. To kind of give you an idea of what the timelines look like. We can. Thanks to. Next stories. I like this. Thank you. So the bottom part is the budget, you see, starting with the red. And the actual budget is approved at the end of the year by statute. So that's kind of the
Hard
anchor point,
yeah.
yeah. And really the budget meetings and the revised budget are in November. And we're looking at September, and I think that MFA said potentially into October for the final approval. So the matchup is good.
Yeah, it's real good.
Yeah, and that was intentional. And the other thing to think about here is that when you look at our budget on a percentage basis, a lot of it's gonna be to rebuild the plant one. And the strategic plan would be, you plan on being in the water business in 25 years, you gotta manage your asset, and that includes rebuilding plant one, and that's where we are. So a big piece of the budget is already focused on some of our very long-term goals. So just throwing that out there as a for instance. And then right now, I don't have any expenditures that we plan for geothermal. But between now and when we put the budget together, it may very well be that we have some news. Whether it's land acquisition or, working with our congressional representatives to get some federal funding, or, there may be some stuff that we have to throw into the budget for that. I think that's the kind of thing that you're gonna see come forward. And then, I would urge you guys, there are a couple of things after our last discussion on Friday. For instance, if you want, as part of your strategic plan, if you see a fundamental shift in staffing, that rather than put that as a goal in the strategic plan, we talk about that in executive session.
Yeah.
And the same when it comes to any kind of municipalization, because that essentially is a real estate transaction that's done at a price. And we want to have those discussions in private rather than out in the open in the strategic plan. So just some food for thought.
So I sent an email to Chris last minute, but it was on the weekend. I just want to remark that, what turnaround time?
Yeah, this, I actually talked to Annette about this morning, and she generated this this morning.
So, thank you.
You're welcome.
This chart really is exactly how we should, the time, the way things, I can just see things cascading and flowing together. One thought I just wanted to bring up for us to consider, I'm thinking about next year. And next year in this process, obviously we don't want to redo the strategic plan every year. How many years we take, that's a topic for discussion, and probably not, let's wait till the end maybe to think about it, but for sure next year we're not going to be updating the strategic plan. And so for sure that there's some aspect of how to download the strategic plan into our budget. And so I think it's the goals at the most, but maybe, and mostly the tasks. As defined the other day in our workshop, those terms have specific meaning in our process, and I just want to make sure the public knows that. And so with the goals and tasks, maybe sometime in what looks like to me, the timing of the open house, happening in July. I mean, the work, I guess that's the work, the line for the open house happens in August, but I'm saying sometime in the summer, July, August timeframe is also where we would revisit our tasks. To be input into the business, the budget process, just throwing that out there as what we would do next year. We would revisit our goals and tasks, and then that's what would drive the annual budget kickoff.
Well, if you look down here, the commission work session on 9/9/25, that would be exactly where we would take those tasks and begin plugging them into the budget.
Thank you. Yeah,
So that is the intersection point of the two things. Now, I mean, there'll be a lot of informal stuff back and forth, but.
so maybe it's August. Maybe August is the month where we kind of,
Well, that's just where we have a plan today. Well, it's the first week of September, but.
yeah, I'm talking about 2026 already.
Yeah, but I mean, we'll have a similar timeline. And then I would submit to you that the strategic plan, we do want to redo it next year, but at a very granular level, only at the bottom.
the goals and tasks.
Right.
Okay,
And I think that's the way to keep it alive, otherwise it sits on the shelf for 5 years. And then we go, you know, even though we've done most of it, we really haven't deferred much to it, and then you pull it down and do a big redo.
Okay.
I think you ought to be doing it incrementally, and then periodically doing a big redo. And let's see, I think that's it for strategic plan, unless you guys have questions. And Friday, we got Friday afternoon, remember that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
any
Yeah.
comments and questions about?
Nice. An exciting time.
Yeah, I'm really happy about it.
Yes.
So moving on to new business then. So we have one action item, and that's the approval of budget schedule, but we don't get better segues than this very often.
No, that's good time. So Annette, do you wanna walk us through that?
Sure. So, yeah, we kind of have it set up pretty good. So this is just what we do every year. Kind of get it in front of you and kind of get it on the calendars for where the different pieces of the budget come in. So, like that, the worksheet shows, we're gonna start off with showing you where we are right now in 25. Then have a discussion in September with you, which kind of correlates with the strategic plan. And then we start doing the draft and the customer meetings, and then the final closeout of the budget. So, is there any questions, or is there any problems with any of these dates that we can adjust?
No, it looks good.
Looks good to me too. Ready?
Yeah, it seems like a good time.
Okay, well, let's just, I'll entertain a motion to approve the budget schedule.
So moved.
Seconded?
Motion and a second, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Did you want more time with that, or was that okay?
No, I'm fine.
Thank you for that. Wow.
No.
Not even no thank you, just do it.
Okay, so we're on to commissioner reports.
All right, I guess I'll go first since I'm there. YRO 1 work plan was approved by the board, so the 5-year work plan was approved by the board last week. Water efficiency was included, not as a standalone strategy, but as something to like integrate into other strategies that were identified. Chris, can you forward that work plan to the other commissioners?
Certainly.
I know there was another person, I can't remember his name, Kevin, I think he might be the mayor of Sumas, was he on the?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, and he was like, the work plan, like, you know, it's a lot of studies and, you know, it seems like there's all this talk and not enough action, and the YRO 1 board is not the people that implement the action, right? They're not the action people, like we are the action people. So it's a good idea to really look over that work plan for the next 5 years and see how the PUD can help with.
Are you suggesting you also take a look at it too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so he will forward that to everyone. I think sometimes there's like miscommunication about maybe what the board does and doesn't do. And like the YRO 1 board doesn't, they identify strategy, but they're not the workhorse, right? Like that's up to the people that sit on the board to make sure that their organizations are implementing the strategy. So it's kind of, we have to do the things, which brings me up to another thing. So water efficiency is included. We talked a bit in strategic planning about, I'm not gonna use the term that Chris doesn't like, but about a solution to the Hearst decision for our basin specifically. I think that now is the time. It takes a legislative fix, right? And we know that if we wait until the legislative session, you've waited too long. So at what point do we decide that we're going to communicate and make an ask of our legislature that we have a solution specifically for our basin?
Yeah, we have an exemption that we need from the Hearst decision.
Yeah.
Or the Hearst meeting.
Foster.
The Foster decision.
Yeah.
Foster district.
So, but we need to make that ask.
But I agree with you,
Yeah,
and we need to have an ask
yes,
in order to make an ask.
yes, that's what I'm saying.
Well, I think the first ask is gonna tumble out of the, water bank. I think that's because you're gonna have to have water that'll stay in the river and then come out at a different location at a different time.
That's what the water bank is doing, it's begging the question
Right,
that we want.
that
to
would be
have
the
answered.
first exemption to the Foster decision that we would look for, that I know about. I mean,
So, but how soon can we come up with something that we present to the legislature
Again,
to get this exemption?
if the watershed management board in September says, yeah, this looks great, pursue it, that would be the trigger.
Okay,
If-
and that's enough time to put something together.
Absolutely,
September would be,
Yeah.
yeah.
and we've been
fall.
working with John and Bill Clark, and
Why not?
Yeah, and I would say, this is when you have the conversation with Bill Clark or see him at a WAPUTA conference, it'd be a good topic to discuss with him. Because he's closely familiar with those efforts to have some legislation to modify the Foster decision and the out of basin transfer issues in the past.
Okay,
And that is really one of the key limitations on water banking in Washington State. Is the Foster decision.
And so many other things that beneficially, augment, stream augmentation,
yeah, anything that changes the stream runs afoul of the Foster decision. And that's good or bad, and that's what people are having trouble with, because
yeah,
when you propose something that's good, you have to get an exemption from the Foster
yeah, it's a
decision for that.
baby out with the bathwater kind of situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, other than a legislative repeal of, everything under the Foster decision, which would be a rewrite of what ecology's able to do and everything else, we need to have a specific exemption just for this watershed, and that I think
Yeah.
we can get through.
okay.
Good.
So I like to hear the timeline for that. So September sounds good.
I'm
I-
glad you're bringing this up, because like, if you think that we should, move for something even this year. Sometimes it takes a few attempts to get something through the legislature.
But the first thing the legislature is gonna turn around and ask is, what do the tribes think?
Mhm.
So if the tribes aren't behind this,
Mhm.
it's not worth pursuing.
Mhm.
So that's why we've gotta get it through in September and have them roll and
Sure.
say, yeah, this is a good idea.
Yeah.
I think everybody else already agrees it's a good idea, it's gonna help in stream flows and everything else,
Yeah.
but.
Yeah, I mean, I have a
everyone
lot
say
of
yes.
compassion for the kind mayor who is weighing in, so I feel like if we're all talking, no action, and it does feel that way, but this is a way I think that we can
Yeah.
act.
Well, and his concern is flood,
Yeah,
not drought,
Right.
and those are immediate and
Yeah.
life threatening, and, and his community's dealt with it now 3 or 4 times in the last decade.
yeah,
So it's kind of I really get where he's coming from,
Mhm.
because he's like, forget the Army Corps of Engineers, I'm gonna go out there with the backhoe and fix this channel issue myself. You get that kind of reaction, and so you can't do that as much as you want to.
mhm. Anyway, so he will send everybody the 5-year work plan. And that's it for my my report. Thank you.
Well, I'm very interested to review that work plan. Yeah, thanks for passing that on. I don't really have anything to report particular today.
I got a bunch. So I'll just go through quite a bit quick.
We're shocked.
So I attended the and I'm gonna hit the water thing first. I attended the Whatcom County Business and Commerce Committee. I typically do that on my own nickel. And they had a panel there to talk about the Yakima adjudication.
Mhm.
And about 4 or 5 years ago, I spent a lot of time studying the Yakima, maybe 4 years actually. I spent a lot of time looking at the Yakima adjudication, talked to a lot of people, including the clerk, the Superior Court clerk. And it was great, and it's a good topic of discussion for figuring out what happens after the parking lot. Now let me explain what I mean. there was a critical moment in the Yakima adjudication. And it happened in a parking lot. And the head of, the irrigation district and the head, and one of the natural resources leads for, the tribe, Yakima tribe, maybe Yakima Nation. Met up in a parking lot after meetings. And said, you know, what's it gonna take for us to get through this? And it's that conversation, like both people, you know, person to person, just. Wanting to resolve the situation is what began, that was a seed that got the whole process that led to the Yakima Basin Integrated Plan to happen. And so the conversation at the Walker County Business and Commerce Committee, there was some obviously frustration. You can expect we'll be frustrated in a complicated process like this. But I'm focusing on the positive. And the positive thing is, how do we get to that parking lot conversation sooner rather than later? And
Can I say something?
yeah.
So I'm so encouraged to see, is it Fred Lickle, who is, he's, Walker Family Farmers, and he's working alongside Eric Hurst.
Yes.
On solutions, so we kind of have our own, you know, maybe not parking lot meetings, but it is encouraging to see these people that are normally on opposite sides of things working together on solutions. Like, solutions can still happen for our watershed, and are being worked on.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that point. Yeah, we have a lot to be proud of in this community, in that there has been contention, there has been fighting, but there's also been a whole lot of positive collaboration, and hopefully that will infect this whole process.
Yeah, and I think that Chris is also part of that.
Yeah.
Those solutions, getting those people together and having conversations. Water banking is gonna be huge for our area, I believe.
It can help.
Yeah.
Yeah, move on to the next one. Did you want to say anything on that subject? Okay, I am going to be part of a conversation that's happening adjacent to the next PPC meeting. I intend to travel to go to the next PPC meeting. I almost without, I haven't been for a couple of years to a PPC meeting in person, I think, or at least a year. And I'm wanting to go to this one in June. Nicholas is leading a conversation, and he's invited legislators. He asked for my help in getting Alex Ramble
Just so
committed.
everyone knows, that's the dual meeting that's associated.
The fuel meeting is actually on the 12th. The 4th and 5th are their regular meetings. I'll do the fuel meeting remotely. This is the 4th morning is the regular meeting. And it's a tentative, it's still not 100% pinned down. To talk to our legislators, particularly Rep. Rommel, about what is beneficial from the PUD's perspective, transmission policy improvements. And so part of that meeting, it would be great for also to get a memo to the commission. Chris, if you summarize some really important points about, you know, how things, like, we're starting from recognizing we're starting over, but transmission policy and bills will come out again. So if you can send all three of us a memo on what are some key things that you think would be helpful to industry on transmission policy improvements. And you probably should send it to Nicholas too.
How about I send it to you three and then you decide if you want to forward it?
However you, okay.
That sounds good, yeah.
Well, I recognize that my verbiage can be contentious, number one, and yeah, and that you may not agree with me. So, I mean, I've got a lot of opinions and that's what they are.
Okay, okay.
Well, yeah, no, that sounds good. Appreciate you, being forthright about your view and giving us the opportunity to review before we pass it on outside the organization, for sure. It sounds like a good way to go.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Where are the PPC meetings?
In Portland.
Yeah, PPC is an organization of GMs And occasionally they invite elected folks, but they're the ones really that were effective at the last Bonneville, rate hearing. And getting that set up so that we get the best deal from Bonneville that we can get.
Gotcha.
They're very focused on, power price issues. And not so much on policy issues, they tend not to be too focused on that, but it's more get the job done with Bonneville, get the best price for public.
And Chris is intimately involved with this long-term study that's due in 2026, right? The Northwest.
Yeah, the 20-year version is due in, I think they're actually looking at the end of this year. It's
Okay.
West Tech, WPT.
West Tech. And that's an extremely valuable study to this conversation. Probably.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of is and it isn't. It highlights the need for a lot of transmission construction in the West. And then if you don't do that, you need to put a lot of gas plants in.
And so
Those are kind
why
of-
that's helpful is because it makes the case for here's both what we need to do and here's the challenges, implied challenges with that too.
And well, the other thing that the study highlights for me is the need to have a regional transmission organization as well as a regional ISO. We need to have an organized market like Midwest or PJM or New York ISO or any of the organized markets, SPP, any of those. And it looks like SPP is willing to expand and cover us. And I think in the long run, that would serve the West very well. And then Cal ISO would look just like ERCOT, a whole other country, and that's fine. They make a big deal out of the seams, but other parts of the country have dealt with that very effectively.
Next, is just a comment, the strategic planning on Friday, I thought it was a good start. I'm seeing a lot of good pieces coming together. It took a little bit of interpretation for me to understand the value. I mean, like, my facial expression must have conveyed confusion a little bit, or like, how does this fit? When we had the presentation on energy and, water. But, after the fact, I think that bringing up a topic like CCA is certainly a thought-provoking topic, and then that in and of itself for me was, not a bad thing in terms of thinking about, we should be open to new ideas for I mean, if that's not gonna come up in the strategic planning process, where is it gonna come up?
Yeah, one thing that, I didn't have anything to do with that presentation. I had no idea what they were even talking about, but Steve did ask me, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks ago, what kind of education I've done with the board. And so I said, well, I've done, a rates presentation, a state of the electric industry presentation, and I forwarded them all to him. And so one of the comments that he had in there was, I'm not gonna replow that ground. And what I hadn't talked to you guys deliberately about was CCAs, because we don't have any in the state yet. And, but so I really appreciate the fact that he was looking for something that we hadn't talked about to throw out there. Might not be something that we want to pursue, but it was a new perspective.
I shared your confusion, but I didn't know that they would be, I didn't know who they were. I didn't know that they were going to be part of the strategic planning. You may have said it and that just didn't click with me, but
A lot of moving parts.
yeah, I did really appreciate their
Yeah.
presentation and being here. So it's my understanding that they sort of can provide the technical information when we come up with our wonderful plans, right, to add to the strategic plan. So, yeah, that's great. I love that they're there. Not a fan of, I don't care what everybody else says, but I'm not a fan of data centers.
Not a fan.
The big data centers,
No matter what, even if they make their own power,
I just,
Think
if
they're a
they
waste of
make
space?
their own power,
yeah.
maybe.
I mean, like, so there's an idea that, I think probably in our one-on-one check-ins, we've mentioned. This idea of turning, Cherry Point with the complete mutual benefit, by the way, everybody's, that's there, and just disclaimer, into an energy park. So that waste heat is reutilized, cooling capacity might even be coordinated. The idea here is that, you know, not requiring massive inputs from outside, you know, and both in the ecological footprint associated with that, doing it all within a relatively well-defined, or it's other collaboration, so.
Yeah, one of the things I forwarded this to you guys, not to hit you with too much stuff, but the data centers around the country right now are going down 3 separate paths. The first path is to be interconnected with the grid and just whatever that takes. And that's typically 5 to 10 years in areas that know how to build transmission lines. And that's too long. I mean, the data centers can be up and running in under 3 years, and that's the business plan. The second one that they're pursuing is a complete isolation from the grid. And that's where they just say, okay, fine, it takes too long to hook up to the grid. We'll just have, you know, we'll get a site, we'll put a power plant on it, we will never connect to the grid, and we'll just supply our own power. And there are a number of them that are pursuing that now, because they can actually build a power plant faster than they can get a transmission study done by their local, you know, TVA or MISO or.
Right.
And the cost of energy isn't killing them. in
Right.
terms of-
It's not a huge input cost I mean, it's a huge input cost, but when you look at their balance sheet and revenue stream, it ends up not being a huge operating issue for them. And then the third policy is they're shutting down because they can't get power here and they're moving to other countries.
Yeah, and the
So
current-
those are the 3 paths that these guys are following.
By the way, as of last week, the big proposal for the big AI data center hub is overseas in Dubai area and all of that, so like,
Yeah.
I mean.
I'm not really sure that's a good idea, just from a kind of, you know, long-term national competitiveness and
Yeah.
national security perspectives.
Right.
No.
I mean, I'm willing to admit.
You wanna
I'm
spy
from-
on our citizens from Dubai, or do you wanna
Maybe.
spy on our citizens
From here, so data centers they're a huge resource suck though, right? Like water, power, like,
Not so much on the water.
well, they used to be, or they.
Yeah, they've gone mainly to dry cooling and.
Yeah, what if we
heat
convince them
recovery.
to help, what if all of them invest in water recovery together?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I lived in the Dalles when Google set up in the Dalles, Oregon, and everybody was so excited. It was Google was coming to the Dalles and it was gonna bring so many jobs and so much money and
Yeah, what is it,
no,
8 jobs
it
again?
doesn't.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, it was not all it was cracked.
Yeah, a couple hundred.
Now, I'm so glad that you're,
Yeah.
just like, listen, when we had a commissioner on who brought up some of the concerns about geothermal, I mean, like,
Yeah.
it's good. It's good to be thinking
Yeah.
about the whole picture.
Anyway, we totally sidelined your conversation. Sorry.
Did you have more things?
I just wanted to say that I have been, it really is the last thing. I have been, involved in countywide conversations on the Whatcom County Charter. This has nothing to do with the PUD. I'm just letting everybody know that I have had, over the last several months, many meetings, many conversations. I've participated in public comment, had conversations with charter commissioners. I'm just letting you all know that I've been an assistant to many charter commission members as it relates to improving our county charter. And the most significant effort of mine has been, exploring whether there was any potential amendment of the charter to address tribal treaty rights. And, spent substantial amount of time exploring that, and it appears that there is none. But I just wanted to let you all know that it's been something that I've been doing on my own nickel, on my own time, and because,
What was your idea specifically? Do you?
oh, I didn't have any, I
Oh,
was
you're just-
facilitating processes and conversations.
gotcha.
I see, about adding, about a potential amendment,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
which is not getting proposed, sounds like.
no, it's not gonna get enforced. It's the county charter.
Well, thanks for disclosing that.
Yeah, I'm just letting you all know, so. That's all my comments.
Okay, well,
So do we have any public comment now?
Robin.
Robin?
Yeah, you guys just raised an issue that's been on my mind, and I've listened to the updates on Point Roberts since it started. And again, I'm just gonna mention a conversation that I see happening nationally. That you've touched on in almost everything you've talked about, which is. Why nothing happens.
Yeah.
Because we've been in, I mean, I started in Lyra. Almost 30 years ago. And here we are. Talking about a water bank again. But what really struck me was the difficulty of actually doing anything in this day and age. I mean, there was a time when a president could come into office and pass a piece of legislation and there was things happening. You're gonna see all of the Biden initiatives, coming online now. You're up against the same thing here. I mean, for whatever reason, there are always reasons that we hobble ourselves with process. And I think that from my point of view and from the point of view of my children and my grandchildren, it's getting to be an issue and you're gonna start hearing more about it now. There's some books coming out from various reporters about what the remedy is for that.
Mhm.
I don't wanna stop broadband is a simple thing. It's a simple thing. And I don't wanna stop putting up poles because somebody's gonna miss a fossil or a little chip. That's just one example. I mean, think about the update of the comprehensive plan. Everybody's got an issue. I mean, we need to solve that somehow. That's gonna hobble us forever, and it's not something that you as a commission can fix. But you can be aware of it and you can share the concern about it with city councils, fire districts, whatever it takes. To do the things we need to do before we burn the planet down. Should get some consideration, and you all have that in common with office holders everywhere. I mean, everybody's accomplishing nothing. And there are reasons for that. You're gonna start seeing this issue get real public. Real soon, and I want you to be aware of it, and I want you to think about it and. Not let what happened in Point Roberts happen to every initiative we have. We need geothermal power. I don't know how you make that go faster, but did I miss the update or was there no update?
There was no update.
Yeah. I want
We're
an update,
still waiting for the Forest Service to approve the land leases and then they have. to
which
hold
is
the
my
auction.
point,
Yeah.
right? Somebody needs to instill some urgency in the local governments and larger governments across the nation, because we're paralyzing ourselves.
Thank you, Robert.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my public comment. for
Thank you,
today.
Robert.
Robert, did you see the pre-feasibility study for the geothermal though? It's online now.
Oh, no, I haven't.
Yeah, go to
Oh, there you
go to our website,
Okay.
and so the results for the pre-feasibility study, at least that
go. There's
first
lots of
portion
great,
of it, right?
great
Yeah.
information there.
The information in that.
Good.
All right. Any other public comment? Okay, well, we'll take a quick break, for a couple minutes and then,
So, commissioners, yeah, could I suggest we reconvene at 30-minute executive session, and then we'd be done time.
You mean 9:30?
9:30. Yeah.
Sounds good. 10.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
And I presume you don't need me in that executive session.
Okay,
no,
Perfect.
all right, thanks,
And
Jen.
have a good week.
we're back in our regular meeting. We just left the executive session. It lasted about an hour. And, thank you all for coming. Is there anything else?
Nothing to report, no action.
There was no action, taken,
Did you
other
have a-
report?
Didn't you have like a brief update one more update you wanted to share on
Oh, yeah, what was that?
EDI?
Oh, yeah, EDI, in my commission report, I forgot to mention that on, Friday, I have a meeting with Jory to update him on the new rules of EDI. To do what we can to help Ferndale be up to, because they weren't at any of those meetings on
Mm.
EDI, so I'm gonna follow up with him on Friday. So, he needs the staff person at City of Ferndale that handles that, so,
Okay,
that's it.
Great.
all right.
Thank you all for coming. If there's anything else for the good order, we adjourn the meeting.